Next, I want to move on to Shawn Malone Khalifa. He is at Irvine College Rising Scholars Program, and the title of his talk is From Rising Scholars to Project Specialist. And with that, I'll let you take it away, Shawn.
Yeah, thank you, Noah. Good to see you, Jody. I was in a meeting with you not too long ago. Very inspirational. Yeah, thank you everybody for being here. This is my pathway to a profession from having a felony to gaining a professional position. I started as a Rising Scholar student and I transitioned into a project specialist for a Rising Scholars program at Irvine Valley College. And what the project specialist does is similar to a program coordinator, except that because we're grant funded, I don't get that title, but I do that work. So to give you a little setup for how you become a Rising Scholar student, I'm going to give you a generalized example of how I found myself incarcerated because you can't apply my experience to everybody, but the generalization should hopefully uh, set the setting for how you become a Rising Scholar student. So I was 15 years old. I had a group of friends, age 16, 17, and 18. A burglary occurred in my neighborhood. I showed up to get involved, actively participated in a burglary. An individual was harmed. That resulted in the felony murder rule being enacted to where I was tried as an adult, direct file to adult court, sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. So as a 15-year-old working to navigate an institution, there was an absence of justice. My experience started back in 2004. And because there was an absence of justice within my experience, it was more punitive, not justice, an absence of restoration. So there was an absence of any type of restoration in the system back in 2004, and it was more punitive. And that's where you get the direct filing and the long-term sentences. So I received 25 years to life in state prison. My 16-year-old co-defendant received life without parole. 17-year-old co-defendant was allowed to testify and go home, and an 18-year-old co-defendant was unfortunately murdered. So that was our experience. We find ourselves in prison. So I have to fast forward to my introduction to the Rising Scholars Program. I'm 13 years in, I'm still sentenced to 25 years to life, and a college comes to our facility. And the way that colleges show up in prisons is they're within a service area. So each community college has a territory, so to speak, to where they're responsible for any potential students within that service area. And the RJ Donovan Correctional Facility down in San Diego falls within the service area of Southwestern Community College. So their leadership had the foresight to say, and this is based on research, to say if there's any students within our service area, we're going to go reach them. And on top of that, they were looking at statistics. My latest numbers from a RAND Corporation study shows that the average recidivism rate for folks that are released from a carceral setting is at 67%. We see that that number is reduced dramatically once you attain an associate's degree. It goes down to 14%. We also see that if folks get a bachelor's degree, it's at 5.6%. And then folks with a master's degree, based on the RAND Corporation's research, it was a 0% recidivism rate. And the reason those numbers are so striking is you can look at that 67% recidivism rate without education. And that's where the restoration wasn't in place for a long time, that now California is taking a leadership position in making sure each state prison, some county facilities, and some juvenile facilities have access to higher educational program because they see it's making an impact. We don't want to continue with that high 67% recidivism rate because it shows that the punitive approach is not working or keeping us safer. Because all of those numbers, when you get down to 14, 5, and 0%, those numbers reflect actual less victims of a crime because for every occurrence of a crime, there is a victim. And that's what those numbers represent. So that's why it's such a good thing. The Rising Scholars Program was initiated to take advantage of reducing recidivism. And that's why they came to RJ Donovan and found me, who was at this point, I'm now in my 30s. While I was turning 30, I'm serving a 25 to life sentence. I had been there a while. I didn't have any college experience. My last educational experience was juvenile hall, where I secured a high school diploma. And I went a long absence without any programs coming to reach me. Rising Scholars show up, they embrace us. What that did for us was it gave us motivation, right? They gave us mentorship. They normalized us. So no longer were we just lifers serving time in prison. We now could contribute to society in a way that impacts our family. For instance, there wasn't many opportunities as a lifer where my mom could sit back and say, I'm proud of my son. So now working towards an associate's degree through the Rising Scholars, my mom could say, wow, my son's in college. He has a 4.0 GPA. So that can get purpose on the yard because this is for currently incarcerated folks. Um, while I'm working towards my degree, the law changes in California through advocacy of my peers. The felony murder rule was modified. I can no longer be incarcerated for life. I'm resentenced to 9 years and I'm released. What that looks like is on short notice, within about 2 weeks, you go from serving life in prison to being sentenced to 9 years. And I've served 16 years at this point. So I'm beyond what the end sentence was, right? So what that looks like for somebody is on short notice, you're released back to the county of your commitment where you were committed from. And for me, that was Riverside. I had no more family or ties to Riverside. I had moved on from engaging with the predominant group in my community. I didn't sell drugs. I just didn't participate in that ecosystem. So going back released, trying to navigate Riverside from jumping from a 15 to a 31-year-old, it felt pretty perilous. The parole officer said, you could just remain in Riverside transient and come check in with me tomorrow. And I didn't know how to process that. I went from having a, I would say, a good life on my level 2 facility where I went to college, I was a rising scholars, to all of a sudden being in society, homeless in a community I didn't necessarily feel safe in, that I was returning to. I left as a child and I had done harm in this community. So now just being thrown back into that, my chances for recidivism was extremely high. And that's where the rising scholars show up again. And I'm able to pick up the phone and call the staff that went into the prison and say, hey, this is my current situation. What type of steps could I take to move forward? And that's where the networking came in, where the rising scholars provide you with a network and it also provides you with mentorship. And the mentorship, luckily for me, was the leadership in that program. They connected me to a housing coordinator in San Diego. The college is located in San Diego. So they gave me ammo to take to my parole officer, which was going to further aid in reducing my recidivism. Because for complete transparency, my first night out, I didn't remain transient in Riverside. I went to go stay with my mom in Orange County, which is technically a violation of your parole. And on parole, you could be sent straight back. I didn't share this information. This was 2020 with my parole officer because I didn't want to just go straight back. But I felt like it was extremely unfortunate that you could be forced to recidivize and there's barriers placed in front of you systematically that maybe even the folks enforcing them aren't necessarily aware of. But this is a way the Rising Scholars Program helps you overcome. So when folks take advantage of Rising Scholars, they now have ammo, they have mentors, they have resources, and they have networking. And for me, what this looked like is within 24 hours, instead of being homeless, I come back to the probation officer and I hand him a piece of paper. I say, here's an address I secured in San Diego. I can keep going to the community college and finish my degree, which at that point, I was lucky enough to have a 4.0. I was halfway to my associates. The parole officer looked at the paper. He looked at the letters where the staff of the program vouched for me. And they said, I approve it. You can go to San Diego. Good luck. Life-changing. If I didn't have the Rising Scholars Program, who knows how it would have played out. So that gets me back to San Diego. The process, what you have to do while you're completing your associate's degree, it's really challenging. You have to work. So I always maintain 2 jobs. It's not fully funded. You do get Cal grants and you do get FAFSA if you qualify. So that income helped me sustain going to school, but you do need that job. You do need that extra income if you're going to live in somewhere like San Diego, Orange County, LA, the Bay Area, where it's really expensive to pay for your apartment. Awesome. Thank you. So that's kind of advice I'll give to anybody who has a felony, who's trying to gain a higher educational degree. Some of the things it gives you is while you're working towards that degree with a felony, you now have goals. My initial job was for court furniture. That job let me go after a week because they discovered I had a felony. I would have loved to do ride sharing. I applied to Uber, Lyft, Instacart. Every single one of those institutions and employers denied me due to a robbery conviction, which I now carry on my record. So going to college gave me an idea that, hey, these companies may be denying me, but there may be something bigger and better in my future because I'm going to get an associate's degree. And that's going to be a testament to my improvement as an individual. I'm no longer reoffending, committing crimes. I'm now able to be a professional and disciplined enough to earn a degree. So thank goodness I worked really hard for minimum wage. I ended up earning my associate's degree and I was allowed to transfer to a university. And that next step, going to a university, you're taking the next step in your potential career because employers are going to look at you as having an associate's degree. You're a University of California student, whether you're Cal State or a private student. All employers are going to take this into account. They're seeing where you came from because there's 2 ways to approach it. You can hide your felony and hide your background and try to earn degrees and just hope that your background check doesn't reveal a felony, or you could be out in the open with it. And that was the approach I always took. I think it has to do with being a lifer, to where I instituted a lot of accountability into my way of being, because you were forced to if you ever wanted to go home. So I always approach every employer letting them know that I'm formerly incarcerated, I'm now out, and I'm doing better, and I'm going to school, and I would like to advance in my career, and I would like to gain employment with you. This is where I'm from. This is where I'm at now. And that's helped me through college because of the Rising Scholars Program. And then it helped me when a Rising Scholars Program was developing at Irvine Valley College. There was a notice they needed a program coordinator, project specialist to develop a Rising Scholars Program. And I felt with my lived experience, plus attaining my sociology degree and working towards a sociology degree at UCI, I felt like I was capable to take that next step and work for a community college, which would put me in the category of a professional and taking that next step from having a felony to now gaining professional employment. And what that transition looked like for me is I had to apply, I had to be interviewed. And thanks to the foresight of folks who came before me who paved this path, we now have positions that honor your lived experience. So part of the criteria to become a project specialist was that you're either formerly incarcerated or at one point you were on probation or parole. That's what they were looking for. So now my 16 years of incarceration became an asset to my application. So that was a part of my cover letter. That was a part of my interview. I was able to share and articulate how that 16 years would make me an ideal candidate to now mentor others who are coming home from the juvenile system or state prison to want to attain their associate's degree. I knew what resources could help benefit them. I knew the financial needs that folks had, housing insecurities. I knew that how important the network was, and my network had only grown from a student into a professional in this position. The hiring process, because I have a felony, still involves having to explain your felony. You're always going to get flagged because your background check and your live scan is going to pull up what has occurred within the last 5 years. And the way my resentencing happened was, instead of reflecting a 2004 conviction, due to the resentencing, I show a 2020 robbery, even though it occurred in 2004. And instead of getting too caught up in the years and like why that is, and it sucks to have a background, I just went ahead of taking accountability and explaining it. So some employers won't give you that second interview, such as Uber, Lyft. Court Furniture doesn't want you on their property if you have a felony. That's a Warren Buffett company. So some companies and corporations won't want you around, and then some will, and they will give you that second interview. So I've always been motivated to stay in the nonprofit world. I work for Wesley House, the Laguna Food Pantry, and Project Aware Enterprises. Those are nonprofits that value your lived experience, and they will give you that second interview to explain your offense when your live scan comes back. But I was very honored that Irvine Valley College extended me the graciousness to give me that second interview and let me explain myself. And what happened was the hiring authority was able to go back and say, okay, this was a 15-year-old kid. His sentence was pretty extreme for his actions. He's now convicted of a robbery. They understood the dynamics. I had gone on to get an associate's degree. I had got on to work towards my bachelor's at UCI. So they felt I was a great candidate. And that's how I got into my professional position with the Irvine Valley College Rising Scholars. While I was there over a year, I was able to we went from 0 to 12 students. So I initiated the outreach. And Irvine's not thought of as a high crime environment. So we had to figure out, what does Irvine look like for folks who are formerly incarcerated? And it's typically commuter students or students who relocate to Irvine and who live there and want that next step in that better life, to where campus should still exist to support them. And that's why our program supports formerly incarcerated folks. They're not necessarily born and raised, grew up in Irvine, committed offenses there, because that's our service area, Laguna Beach, Irvine, Tustin. But we get students similar to myself that are coming from other areas that want to be in Irvine for that change of pace and change of life, and to get a chance to progress in their profession. So I will go ahead and wrap it up here. Let me just touch on some last notes. So programs that have support for formerly incarcerated folks, we should continue to support them. If we see someone with a felony who's open about it and not trying to hide it, we don't necessarily have to coach students and up and coming folks. You'll need, okay, that's someone else. Neil is needed. So you don't want to necessarily coach folks to hide or minimize their offense if they're able to articulate it and make it into an experience that they will be valued for at the next level. For instance, in my professional position, that 16 years of being a 15-year-old to a 31-year-old and being a formerly incarcerated college student and then a currently and formerly incarcerated student, I experienced both. All of that leads to my expertise to when I meet with the board of trustees, which you do at Irvine Valley College. You meet with the chancellor, you meet with the president, the vice president, you attend professional development. My lived experience and my professional experience of earning my degree is knowledge that they would like. I went through a harm language training when I informed leadership at Irvine Valley College on what type of language to use. You don't want to call somebody who's on probation a probationer. Those terms typically come from law enforcement and probation officers for tracking, monitoring, and also to create that ideology that somebody's a probationer, they're other than me, right? So it feeds a different system that's not a redemptive system. It's not to assist our students. So I'm able to help our campus understand that. I don't know if I was the first individual with an open felony at Irvine Valley College. It sure felt like that. I didn't encounter any other staff or employees who had a felony or who were open until about 6 months in my time there. I met the first one. So I like to think that hopefully I made a difference while at Irvine Valley College. And now if someone else applies with a felony for a counseling role, an athletic position, knowing that somebody who had a felony that was a Rising Scholar student or any other type of student is not discriminated against or barred from finding meaningful employment due to the felony. So I'll go ahead and wrap it up and open it up to any questions. Thank you.
All right. So same thing as far as questions go. We got about 4 minutes here for questions before we hand it off to our next panelist here. But go ahead and add those in the Q&A, or if you'd like, go ahead and raise your hand and I can take you off mute and allow you to talk. I don't see any hands up at the moment. I'll just kind of go back to something you kind of said earlier as far as like that transition and your ability to move from, it sounds like Riverside to somewhere else. Can you talk just a little bit about that transition and kind of the role of Rising Scholar? You mentioned it a little bit, but the role of Rising Scholars and kind of allowing you to make that move or that transition?
Of course, yeah, great question. So what Rising Scholars gives you is when you start participating, you get mentors, whether they're peers, they're volunteers at the college or staff. Lucky for me, I had staff as mentors. So that networking to know somebody who's doing well in a community and has connections is going to give you an advantageous position when you re-enter the community. Because in the absence of that, you have absolutely nobody. Especially if you go in as a juvenile, went in as a 15-year-old and got out at 31. So that means my connections and relationships in the community is diminished. And anybody I did know prior, we're doing the criminal elements. It could be drug dealing or anything else. So that's what Rising Scholars gave me, was the networking opportunity to pick up the phone and call my mentors who happen to be watching me maintain a 4.0 halfway to my degree. So they were really eager to have me continue on their campus once I came home as a success story and a testament to why they do their work as well. So that was the main advantageous position, is just having that mentorship and connection. So the networking really enhanced by maintaining my status as a Rising Scholar while incarcerated and during my release.
All right, we do have another question.
How are y'all doing? I just wanted to ask a little bit about the mentorship you were talking about with Rising Scholars. I'm wondering if any of the mentors in that program also share your experience of incarceration, and if not, or even if they do, what impact do you think it would have to have mentors who have similar lived experience? Maybe something you're doing now.
Yeah, correct. I'm currently mentoring youth in the juvenile facilities and even on the college campuses. So I agree. I'm currently doing it, but the way it impacted me before I was doing the work was I had Jen Gomez. She's currently working with the Lifted program at UCI, where they have a bachelor's cohort down in Donovan. And she was at Southwestern College as a lived experience mentor. She spent time in the county jail, had substance abuse, and overcame it. So having that lived experience made me have somebody I could connect with, because I knew that we were also othered. Because you get othered when you have that felony, and that's the reason you continue to carry that label, is so society could know to other you in certain situations. And the idea is that folks can be safe. But what it does is it creates a community of others. So having the lived experience mentor let me listen to them and also vent to them in a way I wouldn't have done with somebody who didn't have the lived experience. What I found is when I get mentors that are absence of the lived experience, I become more of information. So I find that they're more intrigued with the experience versus providing that authentic mentorship that I would like. And even though they have the great intentions of providing it, that's what I feel is missing when I give folks without the lived experience. Hope that
All right.
answered.
Yeah.